Doug McSwane, man. You know, Arlen, it's cool. Sometimes we get to do things like this, and I feel really blessed. The champ is here.
Yeah. From what year did you win the state championship with San Angelo?
1943.
On Christmas Day.
Christmas Day against Lufkin.
Lufkin. Now, where did you play that game?
It was the old Dow High Stadium.
Okay.
And it's no longer there, of course. But our claim to fame was the semifinals game against Highland Park. And Bobby Lane was the quarterback and Doak Walker the running back.
Woo! Doak Walker.
Yeah.
And y'all beat them.
We beat them 21-20. And one of my favorite stories, since y'all are sports fans, we were having our 20th reunion. And Bobby Lane, we had one reel of the game, one reel of it, and we was watching the game. And Bobby Lane completes a pass to Doak Walker. And one of the kids next to me says, "They look like two pretty good players." Says, "Wonder what ever happened to them."
Yeah.
And the reason that's funny, of course, is Bobby Lane and everybody's in the Football Hall of Fame, and Doak Walker won everything in the world. And so, and going into the fourth quarter, they were ahead 20-7. And then in the fourth quarter, we scored 2 touchdowns. And George Graham, our fullback and linebacker, kicked the extra point, and we beat them 21-20.
21-20.
I bet that took the wind right out of their sails.
Well, I don't know what it did to their sails, but it brought ours up pretty good.
Did the coach have to remind y'all you still have one more game to play after that?
Well, of course, yes. But Lufkin didn't have the media and everything that Highland Park had.
Oh, right.
And Highland Park, I was mentioning a while ago, our theory was that those rich kids from Highland Park couldn't play football.
Well, they still can't, can they?
Yeah. If they can now, and they could then, too.
Boy.
So
some big names y'all beat and a big-time team that continues to win to this day.
They're a great program. There's no doubt about it. And of course, me living in that area, I follow them. But they do it the right way. They play the game right, and they have a great coach, of course.
Oh, right.
Randy Allen.
Randy Allen. And so Highland Park is highly respected in the state, but they certainly are in the Metroplex area.
Definitely.
Those teams up there, you follow, Euless Trinity and South Lake Carroll, and you live in Richardson now?
I live in Richardson, and I follow pretty much all of the high school football. More interested in the Dallas area teams. Well, of course, in the powerhouses now are DeSoto and Duncanville, and South Lake is always.
Allen.
Yep, Allen.
Allen is not a high school; it's a college.
So we had the opportunity last year. We called the Midland Legacy Allen football game.
Okay.
And in Abilene.
Good
and
one.
they had 14. I think they had 14 buses show up, or 10 buses show up. That was just their band.
I don't hold me to this, but I think they had a band member of 800 and something members.
I think you're right on that.
I went to one of those Allen games, and the band just covered the field.
Oh, it was incredible, and we sat on the Allen side, and to hear them, they would start playing, and the whole stands would vibrate.
Hey, up.
They were. It was insane.
Yeah.
Speaking of sitting on the Allen side, when they came to town to play Central in the 2016, huge game. People camping out for tickets, just huge. My mama said, "You better take a jacket." I don't need a jacket. And then it got cold, and then it got rainy, and everybody fled to the hardware store, and our quarterback got hurt. Otherwise, who knows?
Yeah, that might have been. We won in 43. When was the next time we won? Did we win again?
There's been 3.
Okay.
Blackshear was one of them.
Yeah, Blackshear.
And
Blackshear.
Central. And what was it, 60?
66.
66. Yeah.
And Well, Blackshear, even when we were in high school in '43, Blackshear had some great football teams. They didn't get any recognition, but Blackshear, we would go to their games. They had some good teams, and of course, no telling what kind of players they would have been if they'd have had it available to them.
Right. Yeah. So, talking about players, during the 40s, that was World War II. How did that affect the team? Did you have players leaving? Did you have players staying in? How was the team built up during that time?
Well, we were just in school.
Okay.
And there wasn't any such thing as the transfer portal or any. You were just went to high school and came out for football and played. And you mentioned during World War II, the thing that I remember most about those years is the total united effort of our nation. We were totally one against the Japanese and the Germans, and there wasn't any question about loyalty or anything like that. And so those, except for the men fighting, it was a time of total
effort from everybody.
Right. Kids,
Rosie the Riveter,
and kids were saving tinfoil
right
off their chewing gum. And
it must have been nice to see everybody put aside any differences and say, "Hey, this is bad, and we got to win this."
Yeah. Well, I don't remember the talk about it. It was just in the DNA.
Right.
And it wasn't on TV every night. You didn't see it all the time except newspaper and hear about it on the radio mostly, right?
Well, if I remember right, we got most of our information at a newsreel at a picture show.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
When you go to the movie, they'd have a 15-minute newsreel, and that's where we got most of our information. And, of course, the newspaper, San Angelo Standard-Times had a morning edition and an evening edition.
After my heart there.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so it was
Extra.
But they were great times for those of us at home.
Right.
And our football team was successful, and that didn't hurt anything as far as.
Well, yes. And did that give the community something? Did y'all have a lot of turnout? Did that give the community something to do besides think about maybe the war effort?
I'm sure it did, but I didn't think about it, that part.
You were just playing ball.
Well, yeah. But if I remember right, we didn't travel. Of course, there's gas rationing, and we would go to the games in parents' cars, if I remember right. And I remember a trip, we played Esleta, and none of us knew how to pronounce the name. Esleta in the by-district. And we had to travel from Angelo and we referred to San Angelo as Angelo.
Oh, yeah.
This was San Angelo High School.
It was
Central.
It was San Angelo High School, but everybody referred it. Our Letterman's Association was the A Association. Everything was A. On our letter sweaters, it was A instead of SA.
That's cool,
right?
Which probably is better being SA, really. But anyway, but the families would travel in cars, like we went to El Paso, and then we played Vernon.
The Lions.
Vernon Lions in the quarterfinals, Highland Park in the semifinals, Lufkin in the finals, and we had some good football players. Mickey Rathbone.
Mickey Rathbone was the quarterback, right?
Yes, but probably in my opinion, the most natural player we have is a guy named Joe Williams, who, if you followed Joe Williams, he was the linebacker and center on offense. Of course, everybody went both ways. And Joe Williams then, after he got out of the service, played at Texas. And Texas had a All-American center, and I can't remember his name right now. But when Joe Williams went to Texas, they moved that All-American center to tackle so that Joe could be the center of that team, of that Texas team. And then Joe went on and played for the San Francisco 49ers.
Right.
And he was, in my experience, he and Doak Walker were probably the two most natural players I ever saw. Joe was just, and of course, in those days, if I remember right, Joe probably weighed about 175 pounds.
And that was big in those days, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was, of course, I was a fat boy. I weighed more than that, but so.
Now, what position? I should have asked you that from the start. What position did you play?
I played tackle, and my in that game I did not start. I was not a starter. Sam Callan, who went on to become a judge, went to law school, became a judge out in El Paso. But and then in those years, for a certain period of time, if you didn't have the credits to graduate, you could stay over and play another year if you were not 18 years of age.
Okay.
So a bunch of us stayed over the next year and played in 1944.
Oh.
And that was, in my opinion, and Dwayne Dodson, then, y'all are familiar with the name Dwayne Dodson, became the quarterback. But George Hughes, George Graham, Dennis Doyle, myself, Sam Callan. Well, Sam Callan became the center then the next year after Joe graduated, and in our championship year, there were 3 games that the score was 13-7. We beat Odessa High School 13-7.
Got to beat those dastardly Odessa schools.
And Abilene was 13-7, and I believe Sweetwater. And then the next year, in 1944, the lowest score in the district was 41-0. We beat. I think our team in 1944, until we got the big head and thought we were great.
Right. And that happens.
And that happens.
Who knocked you out in playoff?
I wish you hadn't asked.
Oh no,
Highland Park.
they got that payback.
Got that
Not
revenge.
only did they do it, it was 39-6.
Oh, they just rubbed it in.
Big time.
Yep.
But in that game, our center, which in the T formation was, and I guess still is, but Sam got knocked out on the kickoff. And we had this is our excuse, which don't hold water very much.
That seemed to happen a lot back then. Somebody got knocked out on the kickoff.
And that happens every game.
And no face masks either, by the way. Y'all didn't have face masks. We have air-conditioned helmets now at LSU, Lee.
Yeah. Air-conditioned
No
helmet.
face masks.
Yeah.
Did you ever get your nose broke?
Well, no, but everybody, you didn't. Well, you probably got your nose broke, but you didn't report it.
Yeah, just crack it back.
The evidence was your teeth got knocked out. So
Looked like a hockey player.
yeah,
You look like Jack Lambert from the Steelers.
But if anybody, we had a kid that wore a bar. Well, we considered him a sissy
Oh,
wearing a bar on the
got
helmet.
the Joe Theismann.
Yeah.
And now you have this cage here, and they have more than this now. With my D lineman used to have I would look at them and go, is there a face in there? Because
Yeah.
I don't know that you have a face behind all that.
Literal air conditioning for LSU. Little ports where they air condition the helmets now.
Well, last night I was watching the championship arena football game, and one of the guys had a visor, and on the visor it had Firebirds across the visor, and I went, how do you line up and see? That's like looking at a machine.
Yeah.
When did they come up with face? When did they start adding face masks for everybody? Do you remember?
It would have been in the late 40s. Well, no, or the early 50s. We did not have face masks. And I went on and played at Texas Tech, and graduated after the football season of 50.
Oh.
And we still did not. My freshman year at Tech, 45, we still had the old leather helmets. And then I went in the service, and when I came back, we had the plastic helmets, but no face mask or anything. And then it would have been in the 50s that the first thing was a plastic bar across.
Right.
And then it evolved into these true face masks. But if I remember right, with the old leather helmet, it wasn't. It was for protection, not as a weapon.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And then as plastic helmets came in, they became a weapon,
Well, sure.
and still are. And that's the reason we see in the current program all of the targeting penalties and
Right.
ejections and everything.
You
The
could
face
take somebody's
mask
head
penalty.
off. Back
Because you
in the day.
you can kill somebody with.
People died playing football in the early days regularly.
Well,
Back in the
but-
early days.
the thing that you mentioned dying, it's still a mystery to me, is that we were not allowed to drink water.
Oh, I was going to ask you about that.
Yep.
And we would play football games in the heat. I remember when I was at Tech, playing at Texas in the afternoon in the first week of September
In Austin.
in Austin, and not allowed to drink water. We'd sneak around and try to suck on a wet towel. But why doctors? Doctors had to know the danger.
And you would think that they had to have known, and there was a story that came out recently about a coach saying, well, the same thing. If you drink water, you're a sissy.
Yeah.
And my daughter, thank you, sports medicine at Central, because I used to tell my airmen, hydrate or die, and she changed it to hydrate or dihydrate, and she'd walk past those linemen and go, you're going to drink some water.
Yeah.
And they'd be like, oh, I don't want any water. You're going to drink some water.
Yeah.
So you didn't have those sports med guys back and girls like you did back in those days.
Could you chew on ice?
No, you couldn't have any kind of liquid, because I don't understand, of course, why.
It makes no sense.
There's tough, and then there's tough.
Well,
There's tough, and then there's
Guys are hardcore
insanity.
tough.
I notice them now. They'll go in and run 3 plays and then come in and drink a bottle of water.
Right.
And rightly so. I still don't have any idea how that, but it was nationwide.
Yeah, it was a
wasn't-
universal belief.
It was universal belief.
It went on in the 80s, too.
Well,
My
yeah.
school, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
and coaches could get away with a lot, too, back then. They could be darn mean.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. You didn't, did you ever, of course, they didn't grab you by the face mask. Whenever I was playing, occasionally they'd grab you by the face
Well,
mask
yeah.
and talk to you.
Well, and it's not even the same game anymore.
No.
Whenever I played, even through college, on offensive linemen, if your hands were more than 2 inches away from your chest, is the illegal use of the hands. Well, now then, it's a wrestling match. You watch the pros or colleges or high school.
Pee-wee.
It's their hand fighting.
Swimming.
Hand jiving the whole time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And going down the field, those D-backs are slapping each other with the receivers.
And this will be indicative of my age, but I still think it was better when we had it. It was blocking. There's no blocking. Well, I'd take that back. Of course there's blocking. but on pass plays, it's not a blocking, it's hand fighting.
Right.
And
Right. It's hand-to-hand combat. just about.
hand-to-hand combat.
Man, did y'all throw the ball much? Y'all
Well-
average like y'all were. By the way, UIL one of the top 100 teams in Texas.
Yeah.
That's you guys.
Well, yeah, Milton Rathbone was an outstanding passer, and we had a kid named Ken Carley. Does that name ring a bell? Ken Carley. Ken Carley was a great receiver, and goodness, can't think of her end. But we had a good pass in the finals game against Lufkin. I believe we scored 3 touchdowns on passes.
Y'all average 30 points a game. Your opponent's 7.
No, it was 26-7, I believe, something like that.
Wow.
Was it the Delaware wing tee type of thing? Just regular wing tee, or
Yeah, it was pretty much just the T formation. The wing T came in a little later on that. Coach Joe Wallace brought the T in, and Milton Rathbone was a natural for the T formation. Of course, he was a good athlete, and ran track but it was. And then we had a kid named Dennis Doyle. There was a tackle. Went on and played for Tulane. George Hughes made All-State in 1944. Joe Williams, that I mentioned earlier, was the only member of the team that made All-State in 43.
Okay.
Joe made All-State, and in that year, Bobby Lane was the All-State quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
George Walmsley, you remember the name George Walmsley,
Right.
that played Navy and then for Rice.
Right.
There was a school at Goose Creek.
Never heard of
is
this.
that near
Well,
Grosvenor?
Well, it became down by Beaumont area, in that area, Goose Creek. But anyway, they were some for the time. There were some good football players in those.
Who was the animal on the team? Was there one guy that was just fierce at getting a fight every darn game?
Well,
and
George
just
Hughes.
Was he when he throw fists?
George Hughes' theory was that they were all mortal enemies and should be eradicated.
I like those kind of
He
guys.
was the
sometimes.
fire-breathing assassin on that team.
Yeah, he was.
Did he get kicked out? Anybody ever get kicked out for fighting?
Well, I'm sure we did. I don't remember exactly. If anybody did, it'd been George.
It's not a stat they kept back
Yeah.
in those days.
Yeah, back then you get in a fight and not get shot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You wouldn't get in trouble. Hey.
What
of
other
course.
sports did you play when you were young? Did you do any other sports?
No, I did not. I was a fat boy.
Yeah.
And,
Now define fat boy. How much do you weigh?
well, I weighed about 240 pounds.
And now that's a little boy if you're playing football.
Well, and of course, now 240 pounds is skinny and can run. And in my day, I not only was fat, I was slow. So
I was going to say, when my grandpa looked at his yearbook, it said we had a heck of a basketball team. We would have been better if we had a court.
yeah,
Just had dirt. And
Yeah,
they
yeah,
ride their horses.
yeah,
Tie up
and
the horses.
and a basket. Yeah. So
Did people come to games on horses ever? Because I mean, for a long
No,
time, rural
no.
people did that.
no, not here. Of course, I moved to San Angelo when I was a junior in high school.
Oh, okay. So you're not originally a West Texan?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, you didn't hear where he
Oh,
was
from the
he's-
the little.
El Dorado Eagles,
El Dorado Eagles.
and of course I still love El Dorado.
Heck yeah.
That's I grew up on a dry land farm. I would read when I was in high school. In school, we would read about the poor farmers, the sharecroppers in Alabama. And when I got older, I found out that's what we were. So,
Did y'all just kind of, your family, all just live right through the Great Depression and just.
yeah, and of course, we kids, the Great Depression, if we had plenty to eat, and we always did. The Great Depression wasn't anything. It was our parents that suffered in the Great
Right.
Depression. We kids didn't know any better. So, but I was 11, and my daughter won't be impressed with this because she's heard it 1,000 times. But I was 11 years old before I lived in a house that had running water.
Oh, wow.
Bathroom. Of course, central heating was unheard of.
You used to open all the windows.
Well, yeah, because there was no air
There
conditioning.
you go. That's right.
And you bathed. Well, in the summertime we bathed in the tank, but in the winter.
The tank, I love it.
Yeah,
That's what we always called it. The
Yeah.
tank.
It's a tank.
The pond.
You know, I told you earlier, my wife's from Reno, and I called something a tank, and she was like, "You mean that pond over there?" And I
Yeah.
went, "No, it's a tank.
Tank, yeah,
it's a tank. It's a tank."
And another word we don't like, the word crick.
Crick.
Yeah.
It's a creek, for crying out loud.
And what about pecan? It's pecan.
Yeah,
it's not
pecan.
pecan.
It's not pecan.
That's right.
Yeah.
What about Christoval? Were they your rival?
No, Cristobal was Class C. They didn't have. Of course, El Dorado was Class B, but Cristobal played 6-man if they played anything. Even
They did that for a long
Cristobal.
time.
Yeah, Cristobal was. I say they were not very big. El Dorado was about 2,000. So.
Oh, wow.
But we didn't think about Cristobal as being a Sonora. At El Dorado, Sonora, and Ozona Junction were the big
Right.
in those days, and probably still are to some
Oh, yeah.
extent.
Sonora was dang good last year.
Yeah, Sonora. We did a Sonora game last year.
On that, if you remember me talking about the at Tech, we played SMU, and Paul Page was one of
Paul
the
Page.
from El Dorado, and of course was a teammate and a friend of mine
Right.
and so I had enjoyment playing against Paul, or it wasn't very enjoyable, not really.
What about the fighting Texas Aggies?
Had to bring it up. Hey, anyway, about Tech.
yeah.
Man, my heart belongs to Aggies.
Well, I have all of the McSwanes and all of the family. The last time I looked, 12 members of my family had gone to Tech or graduated from Tech, so forth. So we were all Tech except one granddaughter went to A&M. And so this past season, A&M played Tennessee for the national championship
Right.
in baseball. And I promised my granddaughter that I would root for the Aggies for the first time in my life.
Yeah.
And evidently they must have found out, so they lost to irritate me, which
See, my grandmother graduated from UT.
okay.
All of us went to A&M schools.
Uh-oh.
And she would always go, "I don't know what I did so wrong to have all of y'all go to an A&M school."
Yeah.
You went
And
to
did she
TU.
ever figure it out?
No, she didn't.
She's probably still wondering. Yeah.
She'd be 106 this year, and she'd still be scratching her head going, "What did I do wrong here?"
Yeah.
We call it TU.
Yeah.
TU.
T-SIPs. Oh, man. We could talk to you pretty much all day.
Okay.
Especially about sports. But how did the coaches go about? You know, we talked about the helmets were more for protection, things like that. So how did coaches get your attention? You know, I know that we talk about how times have changed, and you know, some coaches, I know some would just reach up and smack you in the head,
Headbutt you.
or headbutt you or something. But how was their most effective way of getting your attention?
As always, you can't say in general. Coach Wallace, our head coach, was more verbal, and our line coach was a guy named Puss Irvin, and he was more physical. He still thought he was a football player, so he would do that. But Coach Wallace was more of a motivator voice, and did I think a great job. I really always admired And another thing for you sports fans, our track coach that year was Jack Patterson. Does that name ring a bell?
I'm
Jack
thinking
Patterson,
it sounds familiar.
Jack Patterson then becomes the head coach at Baylor,
Okay.
head track coach, and then track coach at Texas, with great teams everywhere he ever went, and was a prize of a man. A great, and Coach Wallace was too. Coach Wallace went on and became the first head coach at the University of Houston.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
And then became, his last job was dean of men at TCU. So Coach Wallace was the kind of coach you would want, and Coach Patterson and Coach Puss Irvin was too, but Coach Wallace was the main one.
They never said a cuss word, did they?
No, not really.
Really?
Not Coach Wallace.
Really?
Yeah. Coach Wallace had played it at TCU, if I remember right, in 1937, before they won the national championship in 1938.
38, right.
With all their great players. So he was a TCU. But Coach Wallace was the kind of coach you would want your kid to play for.
Nice.
A real motivator.
A real motivator. Yes.
Yeah.
And he did it more positive than negative. He told you what you did right.
That's the way being a teacher. That's the way you have to go about doing it.
Sure.
And
that's the way it is in anything.
build men up. Don't build
Yeah,
them. Don't tear them down.
Yeah.
Well, and speaking of that, I heard you say, and before we got on, we didn't talk about it, but you said you joined the military. What branch did you?
I went in the Army. Well, that's another long story.
Were you scared? Or was it after the war?
It was after. I'm going to tell this story.
It's perfectly fine. We got time, and you know what? I'm a fellow vet, so here you go.
Okay,
I'll take that from you.
Here's my story. Another teammate of mine, Bobby Broyles, on the 43 team. When I got out of high school, I went to Rice. And Rice was on the quarter system. Well, you were getting drafted when you were 18. I was to become 18 on September the 11th, 9/11. You can remember that day. Mm-hmm. Anyway, well, so Broyles and I go down and I go to Rice, and then in October, we go down and join the Navy, and we're scheduled to leave on August the 15th. The war's still raging.
Right.
So on August the 6th, they dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima. And then on the 9th of August, they dropped the bomb on Nagasaki.
Right.
And then on August the 18th, I believe, or the 19th, Japan surrenders. So we say, Broyles and I say, well, we don't want to go. So the war's over. And we go down to the Navy office and they tear up our papers. And so then Rice was in another quarter, so I couldn't go back to Rice. I was going to get drafted at 18. I had to get into school, and Tech was on the semester system. So I go to Tech, which is the greatest thing that ever happened to me. But anyway, so I go to Tech, but as typical to bureaucracy, they're still drafting people. And so we all got drafted and went in the Army. Now that's a long story. That's not interesting to anybody but me. But
well, yeah, but you talk about the Army, and so you went in, and that would have been what, 45?
45.
45. Yeah. So the war ended. You were in the Army. Where did you go?
Well, I went, and that's another beautiful story of my life being lucky. I take basic training in Aberdeen, Maryland,
Aberdeen Proving Ground.
Aberdeen Proving Grounds.
Hot.
Then I go into the Signal Corps, and we go to radio school in Vint Hill Farm School right outside of Washington, D.C. So I get to visit Washington, D.C., and then I go out. I'm sent to Mitchell Field on Long Island, New York, so I get to go all New York.
Right.
It's like a year vacation for me, but because we draftees, I don't know. This is probably not interesting. to anybody.
No, it
very
is absolutely interesting.
We draftees, from the time we went in, they were trying to let us go because they couldn't count on us to do anything.
Right.
It wasn't as if you were a volunteer and had a period of time scheduled. So for my last few months I was in the Army, all I had to do is get up and mop under my bunk and then get out. and I'd go down and play handball or...
Which was harder, football practice or basic training?
Probably basic training, really, because it was longer.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I mentioned my weight. In basic training, I lost 30 pounds. And I think, well, of course, I wasn't eating as much.
Right.
Because you went through the chow line, and that's all you got.
and the way they probably did it, if they did it like whenever I was in, they were like, hurry up and eat.
Yeah.
And you ate like
Yeah.
this, and
Yeah.
then you went, I'm
So-
done.
Yeah, and it wasn't the same quality of food either.
No.
as I was getting at home. But anyway, well, the basic training was still pretty tough at those
I bet.
times, but not
Not overly.
for an 18-year-old.
Right.
You were in shape. I mean, you were used to
And I was
heat
pretty,
and
yeah,
exercise.
and I was. And,
Did you ever tell the drill sergeant, I'm an Angelo state champion. Don't you know who I am?
I don't remember telling the judge sergeant anything.
Other than yes, drill sergeant.
Except yes, sir.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah. Now see, Darren hadn't been to basic training, so he didn't understand. You don't open your mouth in
No.
basic training.
Yeah, you don't go.
You
Hey,
you
I got a
remember
state
your
champion.
serial number 38765-225, sir.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
man.
So you went around. See, whenever I joined the Air Force to go see the world, and I got stationed in Fort Worth.
Okay.
So hey, I was like, what did I do
At
wrong?
Carter Field,
That's right. So, what brought you back here to San Angelo? You were saying you were in New York and Washington and Maryland, but what brought you back to San Angelo?
Well, it's my home. San Angelo still has a tender place in my heart, of course.
You represented the whole town on Christmas Day
Yeah.
and won a state championship.
Yeah.
The first one.
Well,
Y'all did that. Y'all have Christmas after that? After the game, open presents or anything? That was a gift, though, for the whole town.
I never will understand why we had it on Christmas Day, but we did. But I can remember traveling. All the families, of course, went, and I guess a lot of people from San Angelo went. I don't remember exactly.
You had your mind on a football
really
game.
focused.
We were. Well, yeah, we was going to Dallas for one thing.
You remember what the coach said right before y'all went out on the field on that day?
Oh no.
Was he a pep talker, or was he just like, let's go?
Well, you said he was a motivator, so
Motivate, yeah. Did
Yeah,
he make a speech?
yeah, but he wasn't hellfire and all that. It was. I think he would have, if I remember right, it was more factual. They're a good team. This guy's going to be, and more technical on what kind of offense they ran. And
well, what kind of offense did they run? Did they run a T like y'all did?
no, if that's another story. Their coach was Coach Rusty Russell,
Okay.
who had coached. You've read the book The Mighty Mites.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
All right. Rusty Russell went from the Mighty Mites to Highland Park,
Okay.
and he was the coach and a great coach. But they had a unique offense that not like it wasn't standard of anything.
Okay.
The wing
nice.
tee or tee or and of course very successful at it, by the way. Of course they had a great that SMU team, the 48 team. Do y'all really want to hear that?
Absolutely.
The
I will talk
48
football and military with you all day long.
The 48 SMU team. If you won't remember this, but they were rated number 1 in the nation. And prior to the game, and not for our game, but during the season, they or Doak Walker or some member of that team was on the on the cover sheet of Time magazine, Collier's, and rated number 1 in the nation.
Wow.
All that time. And so when we play them, one of my stories that y'all may not even understand, but at Tech we played that team. And if I remember right, they beat us 39-6 or something like that. And we were walking off the field. Old Duck Thompson, our fullback, elbowed me and he said, "That's the most underrated team I ever saw."
They're playing both ways. That you got to play. I mean, you were in there fighting the whole time.
But playing both ways came in 1948.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And so at Tech, my junior and senior year, I only played offense. My freshman year, we went both ways. Of course, in my freshman year in 1945, all the players were either 4F or veterans. The veterans were beginning to come back.
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
Okay.
Go back and play ball.
Come back and play ball, but primarily they were freshmen or 4F. In those years, freshmen could play. Later on, in 46, after the war, freshmen were not eligible until, and probably rightly so at that time, not true now,
Right.
because kids come out of high school better players than we were at our best. Yeah.
So what do you think about the 66 team? Even Steven, same equipment and everything. How would y'all matched up against them?
Well, they'd have probably beat us pretty bad, but that's because football evolved and size and technology.
You just wonder if you guys had a time machine or something evolved with it, what that would have turned out like.
I like to think along those lines, there's no doubt that any good high school football team now would beat us. But I still think that those of us who played then, if we were young, would be the ones that would play on these teams. I think there's something in a kid that causes him to do what he has to do to play.
Right.
And that didn't change. That was the same then as it is now. It was whether you would put in the effort and had the mindset
Right.
to play sports.
You were not afraid to knock somebody's block off.
Well, you enjoyed it.
I
Right.
could see you guys with no face mask coming at you. That'd be terrifying.
No teeth, missing a
Quarterback
few
knock you
teeth,
down.
things like that.
Yeah.
So we have a coach that he coaches at Central, Larry Hulsher, and he wanted to be here to meet you, and he sent some questions over. And one of the questions that Larry had, he's an old coach. This year I started saying we have the Larry Hulsher rule because he always says you tug on the jersey. He coaches defensive backs, and he says you tug on the jersey a little bit, you can get away with that. That's okay. So I call it the Larry Hulsher Holden rule.
Yeah.
But he had a question about how was two-a-days? Was there a two-a-days? Was there?
Oh, yeah.
How was the practice set up?
Yeah, it was 2 days.
There was no Gatorade.
2 days, and we when
Or
here,
water.
About 2 weeks before the season started, we went to Christoval, the team did,
Okay.
and worked out for a period, I think about 2 weeks.
Okay.
And then the next year we went out to Lake Nasworthy somewhere and stayed in,
Oh.
and I get probably now it'd be illegal.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. They do it at home. Of course,
Were y'all hauling hay and doing, farm work too that kept you in shape, that kind of thing?
well, that you can't be general. Some of us did and some of us didn't. Yeah.
Right. Well,
But-
you still
but
lived
most
on
of
the
'em.
farm.
Pardon
Right.
me. Well,
Tough
I
kids.
did. Yeah. But then after I left the farm, my father had Caterpillar tractors,
Okay.
and so I did that kind of work on
You have a Poppin' Johnny?
Caterpillar. Well, Poppin' Johnny was the old John Deere,
Yeah.
and you was either a John Deere man or a Farmall man, and you was either a Ford man or a Chevrolet man.
That's right. And you went to the Ford house to get a Ford car or a Chevy
Yeah.
house to get a.
Oh yeah.
And the Farmall guys, Poppin' Johnny was who, and then the Ford guy didn't like the Chevrolet because they had that. I don't know. The front end didn't work right. Or something.
It stands for fix or repair daily.
Yeah.
No, that was Ford.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about rock and roll? Do you remember Elvis? When Elvis, what did you think about the Beatles and all that? Because I know Coach Wood said he didn't care for the long-haired Beatles; they were a bad influence.
Oh yeah.
Coach
What did you
Wood.
think about that? Was it on your radar or just something in the background?
Well, rock and roll.
By
didn't
that
come
time,
about.
I was trying to feed the family. So yeah.
You didn't care.
Yeah, I didn't care.
But-
That wasn't a problem for me.
You had things like Glenn Miller and Woody Herman and
Glenn Miller, yeah.
What
and
about
those
that?
kind
We
of.
ran through the brambles. When did that come out? You know that the one that
Yeah.
places that are
Yeah, I know what you're referring to.
Battle Hymn of the Republic.
That's probably later. Well, when you get to be 96, nearly everything is later.
You
Well,
lived the
but
life.
Yeah.
If you're like me, you go, but 87 was just a few weeks ago, wasn't it?
Well, I saw this cartoon the other day. The old guy, the wife was saying that the old guy is reading the obituaries and he was writing down, and he was calculating the number of people that died that was younger than he was. So that's where I am when I read the obituary.
Just make sure you're not in it, right?
Yeah, man.
Is that a state championship ring you have on?
No,
did you
this
get a
is-
ring back then? Or?
No, this is a Texas Tech ring. Well,
Cool.
y'all talk longer to me, you'll find that I'm a real Texas Tech.
Well, their fans don't behave is the problem.
Yeah, we don't have. But
you're an Aggie
y'all,
fan, they
but
don't.
Angelo State is now in the Texas Tech.
That's right.
So y'all ought to have a little.
Well, I tried to convince my daughter. I graduated from Tarleton. I tried to convince her. She graduated this year, and I said, "Why don't you go to Tech? Why don't you go to Tech?" And I took her to. I made the mistake. A mistake. It's not a mistake. I'm glad she is. I took her to Tarleton, and drove up, and she took one look, walked around the campus, and she met a couple of people, and she goes, "I'm home, Dad."
Well, I don't blame you. I don't blame her. That Tarleton is.
It's crazy
It's
now.
coming
It's
on
getting
its
bigger and
own.
bigger.
It
too.
is.
Yeah.
That's near my hometown of Dublin, so I went to Tarleton.
Yeah.
My
Well,
parents went there.
Yeah.
One of our good friends went there, and
man.
it's amazing. My wife says y'all are a cult because y'all run in. I wear my Tarleton shirt or my Tarleton hat or
Yeah.
something, and I'll run into somebody and they go, "Hey, Tarleton," and give me the guy, give me the state,
Purple
and
poo.
the purple poo. But
What's the coach's name now? The basketball coach?
Lon Reisman?
Coach Reisman.
No.
Oh no,
He's
Coach
the
Reisman's
athletic
the AD
director.
now.
Yeah.
We're talking about the guy that was coach at Tech and A&M in
Oh,
Missouri. I mean, Kentucky.
Gillespie.
Yeah.
Gillespie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he was it.
And so
He was there.
they've got a good team right now.
They do. They got a.
I went there when Lon Reisman was basketball coach. He discovered Dennis Rodman basically made him play basketball.
Really?
He did. He said, "You're gonna play. Come out of your room."
Okay.
Yes, he was because he didn't play in high school. He had a growth spurt after high school.
Okay.
Reisman was pretty animated.
Coach Reisman, I was on the staff of the paper and got to interview him several times, and he was intense. He was one of
Yeah.
those coaches I didn't want to go interview
Yeah.
because I was a grown man, still scared of him.
Yeah.
It's like my ex-wife. We went to a convention one time, and Coach Wood was there.
Okay.
And he comes over and he's got this piece of paper, and he looks at me and he goes, I'm probably 25, 26, and he goes, Arlen, can you tell me where I need to be? And I went, yeah, Coach, come on, let's go. I'll take you. And this was before, we had cell phones and everything.
Yeah.
And I walk back in, I take him to where he's supposed to be, and he was like, thank you, Arlen, I appreciate it. He gets there. I get back to my ex-wife, and she was like, where did you go? I lost you. And I said, Coach Wood needed to go somewhere, and I took him.
Take him.
And she goes, you hadn't played for that man in 10 years. What? And I said, that's the kind of respect that I had for that man.
Sure.
And still to this day, if he walked in that door,
Sure.
I would still have that much respect
Sure.
for him.
Sure.
Because he
Yeah.
was such and a motivator.
Yeah.
And Darren makes fun of me all the time because, Coach, I blew out my knee I think it was my freshman year. And he comes to me and he says, Arlen? And I was playing saxophone in the band.
Okay.
And he comes to me and he says, Arlen, I just want to tell you something. You're a far better saxophone player than you are a football player. And I went,
Go practice autumn leaves.
I take it I'm going to be a band person now.
Yes,
So, yeah. But total respect, and that's the kind of thing. I enjoyed hearing you say that about your head coach, because that's the kind of respect you have for your head coach.
Sure.
And for a good leader, and you being military too,
Yeah.
a good leader, you'll follow them to hell and back.
Sure.
And that's the kind of thing I'm glad to hear that it wasn't just all fire and brimstone back in those days.
And another thing is they probably don't know. Those really great leaders don't know how great a leader they are.
I agree.
I think that's
I didn't play for him, but I knew him from coming up to the radio station. That's why I wear this hat. He said, "You're my friend. Everything you signed for, my friend." And
Yeah.
it was great. He come in, Coach, what can I do for you? He had to break up a fight one time at the radio station, but all those stories.
Yeah.
And he said, I'll go ahead and say it. It's kind of funny. He said, now I told these rodeo guys, you ag turds are not going to be doing that during football.
yeah.
But he had the kind of respect, and we would say things like he would walk. It would be raining one day, and he walked out of the lion's den to come to practice, and the rain stopped. And we were all like, that's the kind of power this man
Rightly
has.
so, yeah.
That's right.
Showing the proper respect.
That's
yeah.
it. That's it. But
Oh, man.
so, was there any other coach that you mentioned? I forget what your line coach was, but was there any other coach that molded you into?
I probably think Coach Wallace had more influence on my outlook on sports and life than any other coach. I went to his funeral. I followed him, and in the years later on, I stayed in touch with him, and we had our reunion here one year, and I pick him up, and my wife gets to meet him, and he and his wife and my wife hit it off well. And
Right.
so we had a friendship after the coaching days, and he was probably had more influence on me than any coach, and probably
And
the
not
only
just-
one I remember that really had that kind of lasting influence on me.
Right, and not just football, but as a man.
Oh yeah, more so football. You tend to forget that part of it.
Right.
But he was a stern. If you didn't do right, he was going to let you know.
Right.
But it wasn't. It didn't tear you down.
It was, come on, get
It
it
made
right.
you want to do better.
Right.
Correct what you did wrong, and so. And that was not the case with most coaches in those days.
Right. You see, like the Bear Bryant and the Junction Boys, things like
Yeah.
that, and you see more of that tear down. I'm gonna tear you down and build you back up, kind of thing.
Well, they emphasize what you did wrong more than they
Right.
emphasize what you did right, and in fact, you never did anything right enough.
Right.
But that wasn't the case with Coach Wallace and Coach Patterson. Coach Patterson was of the same mold, very humble, all-inclusive, let you keep your pride,
Right.
not tear you down, build you up.
And wasn't making $1 million and had an
Oh,
image
yeah.
and that he had to.
All they want to do is just be good coaches,
Right.
and bring us kids up right, which hopefully they did.
Okay, so I'm gonna. You talk about your wife. So your girlfriend in high school. Did you have a girlfriend in high school?
Maybe I thought so. I don't know how she thought.
Did you go chase the girls at other schools, like go to Oval and try to chase their girls?
Yeah.
If you beat them on the football field, then you date their girls. That's just humiliating.
Oh,
You ever been to DeLeon?
yeah.
That was our rival, Highway 6.
Highway 6.
Our coach used to go spy on them.
What
He'd
was
go
the
sit and spy.
what was the guy from De Leon?
Grady West?
No, the politician.
The DA was John Terrell.
Yeah, but he was lieutenant governor.
Dang, I should know that.
Okay.
Was that Ben Barnes?
Ben Barnes, yeah,
Barnes,
but
yeah.
you're right. Ben Barnes from De Leon.
Yep.
Yeah.
Redheaded, wasn't he?
Yeah,
Red. Yeah.
and he was involved in that some kind of
He was. Yeah. Was it the savings and loans
savings and loan
scam?
Yeah,
He was involved in that. He and my dad knew each other.
Oh,
And-
did
And
they?
my dad had a store in Brownwood, and I remember Ben Barnes coming in
Well, Ben Barnes was on the
Oh.
trajectory
completely.
for governorship, of
Right.
course. And
You know what our coach did? He held up a flyer, DeLeon football camp. He said, y'all had better not. He tore it up. One kid transferred, and he said, you give me that DeLeon jacket, and I'm going to throw it away and give you a Dublin jacket. So we don't allow that here.
yeah.
Those
Well, you know,
rivalries
and-
back in the day.
You're talking about rivalries. Who was the big rivalry at that time? With
For
San
Angelo,
Yes, sir.
it was Odessa and Abilene. But Sweetwater had some great football teams in there.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And Big Spring was our district was Big Spring, Odessa, Midland, Abilene. I guess that was it. But Sweetwater was a worthy opponent
Traditionally
every
good.
year.
The Mustangs.
I was at Walmart over in Ballinger, ran into W.T. Stapler, the coach that they won the state championship with in the 80s. He was
Did
at
they?
Walmart over in Ballinger, he'd say, in his 80s.
Okay, yeah.
I think he still lives there.
Sweetwater, what was the big centers played for Texas? Oh, I can't think of anybody's name anymore.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I can't either. So
Yeah.
Man, we could talk to you all day. We really appreciate you joining us.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll
I've
Rest
enjoyed
up
it.
now.
I've enjoyed it more than y'all. I get to be to tell the stories.
You know what? And that was one of the things I really enjoy, and I don't know if we're still on, but I got to interview a World War II ace one time.
Yeah.
And he sat in my office for 3 days, and I don't think I ever heard the same story twice.
Yeah.
And we talked everything from he was Dick Bong, and I don't know if you know who Dick Bong was, but he was the ace of aces. He had 40 confirmed kills.
Okay.
And he talked everything from being Dick Bong's wingman to his wife to we talked football.
Yeah.
Because the other guy that worked in my office, he was an official. I was a coach.
Yeah.
So we talked football, and we spent 3 days just having the best time.
Well, I watched, and this is not. Don't take this as political. But I was watching the Republican convention, and they have a 98-year-old veteran as one of the speakers, and he was still sharp mentally, and he had been in the Battle of the Bulge and all of that, and he he ended up just saying, "And President, if you need me, I'm ready to go again." So,
But that's the way we are, right?
That's
as
the way
vets?
you're supposed to
That's
be.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but M1 Garand.
Yeah. So
I wore the P-51 Mustang shirt.
yeah, that was a great,
Great aircraft.
Yeah.
It was, and am I not right that the Flying Tigers, didn't the Flying Tigers in China?
Yes, they did.
It was the P-51.
They flew the P-51, right?
They had the range to go with the bombers.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the Messerschmitts and blow them out of the sky. That's cool.
We could talk
Forever, yeah.
we could go and talk about World War II and aircraft and everything for days, and it's been such a pleasure to be able to talk to you.
Well, I've enjoyed it.
And an honor to be able to sit here and talk football and talk military and just talk life back in those days, because I think a lot of times what happens, and I know for me, and it crushes me because my grandparents raised me, I didn't sit down and talk to them. So everything that I have is stories that my grandmother told me about, well, your grandfather used to do this to all the soldiers that came in that thought they wanted to date me. If anybody came in and he found out that they were interested in my grandmother, he'd put them immediately on a transport out and send them out. So I hear stories like that, but it's a pleasure to be able to sit here and talk to you and get those stories. And I think our kids miss that a lot of times. And I know being a school teacher that we don't get to teach, World War II or some of the history the way we should. And it's been an honor and a pleasure. And I don't know if you know how honored I am to sit here and be in your presence.
You have lived a life, sir.
You need to set your honors
And
a
you're
little
still going.
higher.
Hey, I'm telling you, I'll take it.
All you Bobcats, remember
That's
this.
right. Remember, and
Well,
I love the A. I love that it was just the A. And
Yeah.
I love that.
Well,
We should wear
and
that.
my good friend Buddy Bill gave me this jersey on my 90th birthday, and he explained to me that it represents the angry orange.
That's right.
So I'm an angry orange man now.
When the world was on fire,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you guys on Christmas Day won a state championship.
Yeah.
That's
And-
awesome, man.
And we were it's still the only undefeated Angelo team, San Angelo team.
That's history.
They were-
Motivation, guys.
But I think we did it because we didn't know any better.
Yeah, well, and he didn't have face mask, and he barely had helmets. Couldn't drink any water,
Well,
and get
yeah.
your teeth knocked out.
I was going to say, I looked at an old newspaper from Dublin. It said the kids in 1983, they all agreed, no dipping, no beer
Yeah.
for the season. You would never say that now at the paper.
Yeah, but it is, and you see, and I like what you said about there's a mentality to
Yeah.
play football,
And yeah.
and a mentality to do things.
In sports, one of my favorite sports is track,
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
because you see them give everything they've got. And that don't happen very much in sports, even in football. You
No.
take you rest a little if you get too tired.
Yeah.
But in track, there's no time to rest.
No, you don't get a down moment, and
Yeah.
and I forget what movie it was, but there was one scene where he talks about baseball, and he enjoys baseball because at the plate you're by yourself.
Yeah.
On the field you're with a team.
Yeah.
And I think with track
Yeah.
you're by yourself.
Yeah. Yes.
I went to track camp with Don Hood, Abilene Christian. You ever heard of him?
Yeah. I have.
He was cool. He wouldn't cuss at you. What do you do? You come and go, you dummy. What do you, don't plant a pole like that, you dang dummy. Oh, come here, dummy. He was great. We had a
Great motivator there, you know.
Thank you, Doug.
Okay.
We appreciate it. Thank you so
Doug
much.
McSwane.
Enjoyed it. very
OG. San Angelo, state champion.
much. Okay.
Thank
Let's
y'all.
get a picture too.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
You move faster than I do.
Well,
Take this picture, please.
Well, I hope to see we get a good time. I
Yeah,
enjoyed
this has
I'll
been-
always remember.
been very enjoyable to me.